Beyond the Notes: How Jazz Elevates Your Well-Being with Christian Tamburr. In this special episode, we'll explore how music is the bridge to the soul and explore the transformative power of jazz, celebrating the iconic names that have shaped this beloved genre. Christian's dedication to persevering and sharing the magic of the icons of jazz shines through his curated concerts featuring world class musicians performing timeless classics. Be ready for inspiration as Christian shares his insights and experiences, illuminating how music can elevate our lives spiritually, intellectually, and physically. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show, where you're about to go on a wellness driven ride. Let me share a little bit about the incredible guest that we have here today. World-renowned vibraphonist and composer Christian Tamburr has graced stages in over 67 countries, captivating audiences with his musical mastery. Collaborating with legends like Dave Brubeck and Julio Iglesias, he's also the creative force behind the Icons of Jazz concert series, showcasing music's power to elevate our souls. Christian is a dedicated educator and leader who merges music and leadership through Sonic Leadership LLC. With multiple albums released, his debut album, Move, and role as a Jazz at Lincoln Center ambassador have further cemented his influence. I am so pleased to help welcome to our stage today, Mr. Christian Tamburr. Welcome.
April, that was such a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much. You made me sound so good and we haven't even started. So thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Well, I can't possibly make you sound as good as you truly are. If anybody checks out your work, it is so fun. It's so engaging, so entertaining, and there's humor to go along with it. So I am so honored to have you here today. So let's get started by sharing a little bit more about yourself so the audience can get to know you more.
Sure. So I am a touring jazz musician. I've been doing music professionally for 30 years. I started when I was quite young. I was about 14 years old when I first stepped on stage as a professional musician. If anybody's doing math, please stop. But I've been doing that for over 30 years. And, starting as an artist, just stepping on stage, performing, following the music that I love, which is jazz. Really had a great passion for this amazing American art form, and I've had a great opportunity to travel, as you said, around the world many times, sharing this great music with a lot of different people. My career has grown into different areas of the industry. I love not just playing the music. I love understanding the operational rigor around presenting music, the business of music. I've worked in a lot of different capacities, not only as a side musician, but what we would call a musical director, working to run the operations of what you see on stage. So I've done this for folks like Julio Iglesias, as you mentioned, Cirque du Soleil, and many other large production shows. Again, taking on the role of not only playing, but also, making it happen from top to bottom. I love all that kind of stuff. So through my journey of these years, I've really just tried to encapsulate as much of the industry as I can so that I can kind of keep doing what I love to do. I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and yeah, it's a good day.
It's a great day. You've done so much. My goodness. Okay. So I have to ask right off the bat, who has inspired you the most?
Oh, that I knew that was going to be a
Heavy
question you were going to ask.
question.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, that's fair. That's fair. First question out of the bag, just like right there hits you. So I was inspired. Well, I'm constantly inspired by a lot of great musicians and people that I see on a regular basis. I'm surprised. Well, maybe I'm not surprised. I'm always learning new things. You know, a great artist is never done creating their art. They're always trying to learn more and dive more in. But I think my biggest first influence and inspiration really was my father. He was the reason there was so much music in the home. He played guitar, not professionally. He restored old European cars. But on the weekends, he would sit with his acoustic guitar and play. And of course, like any youngin, they wanted to be like their parents, right? They wanted to grow up and be like dad. And so I started picking up the guitar when I was very young, about 5 years old. And then I discovered a knack for kind of hearing my way around a piano. And I just have always had music in my life. So for me, one of my biggest inspirations has been my dad. My mom couldn't sing herself out of a paper bag, but bless her heart, she was the most supportive person in my life. You know, like when you think about parents seeing where are your kids going to go in life, we hope they just accomplish great things, you know, like lawyer, 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 doctor, 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 jazz musician, you know, so they were supportive. They've always have been. So I have to think my first biggest inspiration was my parents and my dad just kind of sharing the music with me.
Mm. Well, that's a really beautiful example, and it brings us back into if we dive a little bit deeper into how we got to be where we are today, right? And so much of that is childhood inspiration and figuring out what it is that we wanted to be when we grew up. A lot of people can't answer that question. They get stumped, they forget. But
Yeah.
you, Christian, have really followed through with that, and I would venture to say that a lot of creatives tend to do so, or they happen upon it later on in life when they do ask themselves that question and then they actually follow through with it. But because you were really geared up as a child to keep exploring in music, and you did so. So let's go a little bit into to school years. Were there some times for you that were really pivotal moments that led you in a certain direction or course?
I- you know, I mean, yes, absolutely. You know, so I was one of those. So I was an only child. My parent, I think for any only child out there, the relationship tends to be different. So I've been told between a child and parents, right? It seems to be more conversational, maybe seems to be more like, I don't know. It's just different. People tell me this, they label me with, oh, you're an only child. I get it a lot. I don't see it as a bad thing. I'm sure people who have siblings, I'm sure it's a great thing. But you know, I enjoyed having all the things to myself. Still working on sharing. But anyway, my mom and dad had their own business, and I saw that. You know, I saw how hard they worked. I saw how passionate my mom and dad both were to make my dad's business really thrive. And that was a combination of a passion for, you know, he loved art and he loved these beautiful exotic cars and antique cars, and he loved trying to make it all work. And then my mom was in the background running the business, right? Trying to make it all get out to the public, and you know, connecting the technical side of what my dad was doing to the real world of like actually making money at it, right? And so I was really fortunate to have that exposure to how you know, how a business runs, right? And so when I started to find these moments in my life where was definitely gravitating towards music as something that I connected with, I mean, I wasn't the sports guy. I definitely, you know, I did like equestrian things and tennis, and I was bad at all of them. So, you know, when I found music, I think I arrived at this moment where I was like, finally, I found my people, right? And this was
Yeah.
pretty young. I was like sixth grade going into seventh grade. So a lot of things happening at that time in people's lives anyway. But I really was like, oh, there's this whole other group of people that likes something that I like and they're passionate. So again, I was always very inspired to see other people passionate about what you know, what they love, and was kind of fueled by that. So, you know, that first step into like sixth, seventh grade, I mean, that was like a pivotal moment. I was like, oh, there's people like me out there. I'm going to be okay. I'll hang with this group. And then there was a couple other moments, you know, going into high school where um, I had people that saw that I had potential, And instead
Mm.
of like just kind of keeping it in the box, they really worked to facilitate opportunities to see that I could try to take things to the next step. And again, like bringing back my parents, like, what do you want to do this weekend? Oh, let's go play at the beach, or let's go out to Disney World or something like that. I'm like, hey, let's go down to the jazz club and do some, jam on some standards with people 15 times my age. Like my parents are like, sure, let's do it. So, again, like I felt like I was very fortunate to have a lot of people in my life as I was going through those formative years that just said yes. And we're like, saw the drive, saw the passion, and instead of like hampering it or trying to deter to what everybody else should be doing,
Yeah.
really just pushed it forward.
You said something that I want to go back to and highlight because I think that it's a very important feature that we all, if we don't discover it earlier, then better later. It doesn't matter. But the people that we surround ourselves with, and you mentioned that when you found music, you were like, "These are my people," and so oftentimes we kind of try to fit ourselves the square pegs in the round holes or vice versa, what have you. We try to fit into places that just don't necessarily feel right or don't come naturally, so to speak. And even though you're giving it your best, it's just not quite working out. But when we find those energies and those people that we can surround ourselves with, life just expands so much greater. So do you want to tap on that a little bit, on what that's been like for you, and how that's affected your life and surrounding yourself with the right people?
Yeah, it's something that I talk to still to this day as to being one of the most important parts of what I would say a successful organization, a successful ensemble, whatever it might be. When you find people that are of like mind or of have a common passion, I think it starts to open this creative mind, especially if you're somebody who comes from a creative space, about looking at the thing that you're doing in a different way, right? You start to see how they do it and kind of learn their method, and then you see how you're doing it, and you're always kind of gauging. And through this process, you have discovery, right? You have epiphany moments. You have moments of, that way will never work, but you're open to seeing different methods, different ways of solving a problem or getting better at a song passage or playing a certain note or whatever that problem might be, or that next hurdle you're trying to achieve. You are surrounded by people that are also trying to get over that same goal line, and hopefully learning a little bit about their process and applying it to your own processes and for the betterment of your journey, right? So, to me, I speak to this even to this day. I think about the artists and musicians that I surround myself with now. I am fortunate enough to have. I always use the word Rolodex, but most people don't know what that is anymore. But like my iPhone library of contacts is filled with really great people, great
Yeah.
artists. Everybody in that phone that is a musician or in this industry is the best of what they do. But that's a given. That's like the easy, obvious thing. The reason they're in that phone and the reason they continue to collaborate, that I continue to collaborate because I like them, they are nice people. And I've found that when you surround yourself with people that are dedicated, joyful, have a passion, and are also nice human beings, boy, that goes a long way. And it makes doing what you do so much more joyful. It's not always possible. It's an impossible, it is 100% of the times, right? Like it's not something that we can always lock up and guarantee. But if that's a part of how we vet the people that we bring into that inner circle, especially in a creative space, the joy, the freedom, the excitement that like results in something really positive on the other end is just that much more engaging, dynamic, and fruitful. So.
Ah, it's a beautiful pillar to add to that. Now, Christian, I know that you work with corporate as well, and you help lead in so many different facets of life, not just in the music industry, but on so many different levels, and people, because we're all human beings, experience the same things. And when we are able to bring quality to our businesses, to our profession, to the relationships that we have. There's so much similarity with that, right? So when we talk about having great relationships, that's one amazing aspect of it. And also when we talk about being kind of in a funk or what have you, I like to say that music is the bridge to the soul.
Yeah.
And so I would love for you to give your context on what that means for you and how that has applied in life.
Oh boy, you touched on a lot of different things there. Yes, so the cliche saying is that music is the international language, right? It is one of these
Yeah.
things that, and it is, it really is. And I
Yes.
think about all the places I've gone where I'm playing a style of music that is super obscure comparatively to where I might be, but there is kind of this visual dynamic of what's happening on stage. Again, the joy, the passion, hopefully is also being observed. It's not just the notes, it's not just the sounds, it's the intensity of the moment. And that I think when people open their ears or experience something in a unique way or a different way, and you spoke to that specifically in corporate, which tends to be talking head, a PowerPoint presentation. Here's how we have to get better at this. This is what we're not doing good. Here's some sort of joke. And then, 3 months later, it's a different talking head kind of doing the same thing. I always try to compare myself as like the cool uncle that comes in and like shakes everything up a little bit. Still like trying to be supportive of what the parents are, clean your room, eat your vegetables. But by doing it through a medium that takes people to an initial point of enjoyment or entertainment, and then layered in with some tasks or takeaways that actually can add benefit to their productivity or how they, oh wow, I never knew you were a singer, and oh, you like music. It's just amazing that when I look out specifically with some of the corporate events that we do with Sonic Leadership, to see how music opens a whole new dialogue across a group of people that have never even talked about what music they like or what music they listen to, let alone now taking part in an event that leverages music on how to learn. So, I don't know. I feel like I danced around your question, which you've shaped so lovely, but it is key. I think music has an amazing power to connect people, to open their minds, to bring them a certain level of joy or emotion, allowing whatever happens next to be just that much better.
It brings you to the present moment,
Yes.
unlike most things, doesn't it?
Yeah. 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 I mean, live music, I'm going to talk specifically about live music because a lot of the content that we as a general society tend to interact with now is on some sort of device, which is fine. But like when I think about being in the moment at a live concert, my biggest pet peeve is like when I look out from stage and all I see is like phones, you know, I kind of want to say like, oh my gosh, put the phone down, like just be in the moment, just enjoy this. Like,
Mm,
are you really going to
mhm.
go back and watch that minute and 46-second long video? Like, no, it's just like you're doing it because everybody else is doing it. Stop. But I always really try to empower people to like just enjoy the moment, be there, be present, enjoy the moment with who you're with, and I don't know, learn something. Like, don't rely on this like, oh, I'm going to get this video of it and show it to all my people, and like the intention of you being somewhere or experiencing something is kind of fueled by doing something later. Like, like cancel that out of the equation and focus on being there in the moment. I think that's a much more rewarding experience.
It is, and it just it feels good. I agree with you. A rewarding experience is a great way to put it.
I mean, if you're at Taylor Swift and you're with like 8 million people and they all have their phones out and they're all like, I'm not saying like that, like, I'm not saying like, don't do that. I'm just saying like, the next time you go and hear some music, like, is the first inclination to like pick up your phone and then capture that so that you can just show it to somebody else? Or is the first inclination to like sit back and like actually like admire what's going on, like check out the artistry, try to dive into it? Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Uh, well, I do have to say, I must say that I gained a whole new appreciation for jazz when I heard it live for the first time.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, it like opens up different levels of dimensions of the sounds, and
Mhm.
it's very, very cool. We're gonna move into our commercial, and when we get back, I can't wait to continue the conversation. Stay
Sounds
tuned.
good.
Are you ready to take control of your ride to wellness? Rev up with Driven Living. Visit www.drivenliving.com and buckle up for a journey. Get exclusive access to our Wellness Driven Life Show guest portal, where you can dive deep into the minds of our esteemed guests. Sign up for our newsletter and get insider scoops on these distinguished personalities. It's like having a backstage pass to their life-changing wisdom. But that's not all. You'll also receive a free hug. You heard me right, a free hug. An enlightening ebook from the Driven Living team. Discover the science-backed benefits of hugging yourself. It's a fill-up for your wellness tank. Because at Driven Living, we believe in fueling your journey to wellness, both physically and psychologically. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.drivenliving.com today. Welcome back, everyone. Here with the incredible Christian Tamburr. My gosh, how did I mess that up?
That's okay. I listen. Let's go to any Starbucks and you will hear my name butchered 10 times worse. So,
Oh,
yeah, it's just, I usually go by Chris just to like try to simplify it, and they still find a way to like, yeah. So
now your music has been played in Starbucks for how many years now?
yeah, I listen, I know it's like when I go to Costco, I'm like, I don't know if you recognize me from the magazine, but no, no, I might be just going to a purely like initial basis now, like, because I feel like I don't know what it is. Christian has always been this name that like when people say Christian, like how do you spell that? I'm like the religion or the way that you spell it. I don't know. And I know there's a lot of ways to maybe get to that name, but anyway, you're not the first, you won't be the last. So it's all good.
Oh, well, I got beat red over here. So you know, when you speak to a lot of people, you're not going to get everything right. And that's just the way that it is.
That's life.
But let's dive in a little bit further with this conversation because we're talking about music. I would love to explore a little bit further into jazz in and of itself.
Sure.
How has that enlivened you? On I know on many different avenues, but can you think of some things that come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple big takeaways that I think jazz has that are unique to itself as an art form, both for the artist performing the music as well as for an audience member like yourself. And you mentioned before the commercial break that, really you didn't have an appreciation of jazz until you had seen it live. And
Yeah.
I mean, listen, we could get into a very deep conversation as to why that probably is. I mean, jazz is a very wide genre name, from Kenny G to Miles Davis. Oh, I don't even like putting them together, but Kenny G to Miles Davis to like, and
Yeah.
everything in between is jazz, right? And so, it's background music as you're going up an elevator at the St. Ritz. It's also on the main stage of Lincoln Center in New York City, selling out thousands of seats. Like it's like jazz is so, I understand. And I think your point is like seeing it live is really kind of important because it shows what is I'm drawn to is the artistry and some of the spontaneity and improvisation that makes jazz really truly unique. One of the core fundamental attributes of jazz is this element of improvisation, right? Where we have a beautiful melody, something think of like Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and we hear that song from top to bottom, and then the artist who's been performing or playing that song goes back and improvises a melody, hopefully inspired by that original song melody, right? And we think of like the great Louis Armstrong and how he took some of these great songs that were in the famous shows of the day and brought them into the horn, into the small group, and kind of manipulated these melodies to have an identity behind themselves while still feeling like you know the song. Like the song is still going, you still hear Somewhere Over the Rainbow, but now you hear it through a new voice with some notes that are kind of added or taken away, that are stylized and created right in that moment by the artist. And so when you think about the amount of just pure musical knowledge, and I won't get into the geeky stuff of like, you know, harmony and melody and improvisation at that level, but when you look at an artist who's doing that at a high level, they're creating that moment, that musical moment right there. It's never been done before. It's never been played that way before. Unlike classical or something where the artists are reading the notes very specifically and the goal is to do it exactly the same every single time, a jazz artist is in many times trying to create a moment that's never existed before, you know. And when you think about excitement or life that is just kind of happening at this very kind of sitting on the edge of your seat moment, that is the ride for me as an artist that is not comparable to anything else that you do in life. When you're in the moment, somebody's reacting to you, the drummer hears something and kind of does something, the bass player does something, and then it's this kind of ongoing conversation that's creating this beautiful sounding music. And for the audience member, having a little bit of that perspective is really important to the enjoyment side, right? So now you're kind of having the back of your mind like, wow, this guy is like just making this all up right now. It sounds really good. And look at how into it the drummer is. And wow, I'm like tapping my feet and this is like a thing. And like, we're all applauding now. Like there is an excitement, there is an energy, and there's an intensity that comes behind the artistry of jazz and when great jazz is played. And so those are the things. That's that ride that I always compare it to, that is kind of hard to create in the real world unless you're out there on the stage. So, you know, I implore you to go hear live music and kind of think about that, specifically if it's jazz, like what is actually happening here. And that's kind of amazing. So yeah, I applaud you for going and checking out live. That's the best way to get into it.
Oh, I love live music. You know, my husband and I, we love to go dance. We just love to have a good time. It's kind of like it's shaking off all the energy from the work week or what have you. Kind of like animals shake off energy, right? You'll
Sure.
see a deer or a dog or a rabbit or whatever, they do that little shake, and uh, we do our little shake and dancing. And so it's so fun to be able to do that and have an incredible band with all of their energy that's just, you know, going out into the crowd. And then but I love so much how you described what it's like as a musician when you're creating something new continuously. It's like there's a never-ending piece to the creative world and aspect, and that's what makes it so fun. It makes it you know, you don't want to stop going back to that. It becomes like this addiction almost, you know, where
That's a fair description. That's fair. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you know, I mean, the thing about being a jazz musician is, again, one of these cliche kind of like, oh, jazz, it's just a bunch of musicians up there making it all up. Our goal, I think, this is me humbly speaking, is to not only make it all up, but make it sound good. Like that, you know, there is a style of jazz, avant-garde jazz that is, or free jazz, which is not my cup of tea. It is some people's like, you know, whole thing. And that is pretty spastic. But when I think about like some of the great players of this music, you know, Louis Armstrong, Errol Garner, John Coltrane, there are some guys that have like really defined the style of this music, that are not only doing this, riding this wave and kind of creating the moment in the moment, but oh man, they make it sound great. It sounds like it's been orchestrated. It sounds like it's been rehearsed. It sounds like they've been working on this arrangement for months. And yet that's the first time we've all ever heard it, including the musicians themselves. So yeah, there's a lot to it. So yeah, it is like riding a wave.
It's so fun. Uh, what are you creating right now? I know that the cool thing is that you bring this to life to people through icons of jazz, right? You have many you already have a bunch of dates out that you're providing this to all of us globally, right?
Mhm.
Which is
Yep.
very cool. And I think that that's important. We never want to lose that, where we have we're not just listening with earbuds or what have you. We get to experience it live in person and really feel into that energy that it brings. But what are you most excited about creating right now?
Yeah, I think the Icons of Jazz, which is a concert series that I started curating about 2.5 years ago, just coming out from underneath COVID, um, was an intention of trying to find this balance of, you mentioned 67 countries, and it's probably more since that bio was written. But like, when I was younger, I was traveling 220, 230 days a year. And as an artist, as a musician, we're only making money when we're on the road. And that's fine when you're like 23 and have like zero obligations and seven roommates and like, whatever, you can live out of a suitcase. That's great. Fast forward to having two children and a wife and 16 chickens and like a yard that needs to get mowed every day. Well, not every day, but you know what I mean. Uh, y- y- those priorities do shift. And for me, I think there was a big point in my life, which I think for a lot of parents, and for any of you out there that don't have kids, sorry, this is going to be that. Oh, you just don't know what it is until it happens to you. And then everything changes. And it's really true. Like I hadn't really experienced this big pivot in my life until my wife and I decided to have kids. And all of a sudden you have like these little humans that are like dependent on you being there. And that kind of goes against being out on the road all the time. And I didn't want to be one of those statistics, which trust me, I met plenty of them, of those musicians that were just missed first steps. They missed talking. They missed a lot, right? I didn't want to do that. And I made the choice um, that I wasn't going to do that because I wanted to be present. I wanted to be a part of my kid's life and I wanted to find a balance. So, getting to your question, what does that have to do with Icons of Jazz? And Christian, you mentioned that was 3 years ago. Well, it's a bit of a journey to get to a point where you can make these big pivots. I had started kind of ratcheting back my touring and trying to be more selective about when I'm away. But what I realized living where I live is that there's all these great venues, and jazz deserves to have a place where it can be really experienced as an art form in a beautiful venue where the lights come down and the lights come up on stage, and you can see all that artistry presented in a beautiful way. And I can do that and get home to take my kids to school in the morning, right? Do I have to do all these travel days? How do I curate and start to network together venues that are a few hours away where I can still present my music, the music that I love, at a very high level, at a high level venue, and not have to be on an airplane, 70% of the time? And so Icons of Jazz really started as a few theaters that were driving distance, not competing with each other in markets, but like we're driving distance that I could bring national artists, myself, present this great music in a way that deserves to be presented, and get home and not have to be on airplanes all the time. Now, slight evolution of the situation. It's gained some popularity. We now have about 12 venues between DC, Virginia, Kentucky. Okay, it's grown a little bit. So I'm still working on the balance. But the thing that I do have control of, April, is when I go and where I go, right? And when I leave. Instead of
Mm.
waiting for somebody else to say, here's where the tour dates are, you're going to leave and you're going to miss your daughter's birthday. Like I can block out my calendar of upcoming, choir performance at school and put that in my calendar that's on Tuesday the 15th. And I'm going to be there. Like I'm not going to book a show there. And part of creating this network was to also create the opportunity to control how my schedule works, do it at a high
Mm.
level, and still feel artistically fulfilled.
Wow, that's awesome. And you have certainly created that, and it keeps expanding and evolving right alongside what you need for
Yeah,
yourself and your family.
yeah, yeah. It's
Beautiful.
it's a balance. It doesn't always work. I mean, you know this game. Like it's a lot of this stuff is great when you say it, and then you look at the schedule and you're like, oh my gosh, it's a crazy November, right? And I do my best. I do my best, but I think a majority of the time, I'm trying to dial this in so that there will be a point where I can sit back and be even more selective about what I'm doing and where I'm going. But yeah, it is number one on the priority list of how I operate my life, which is family, time together, and how what I do fits into that equation in that stack rank, if that makes sense.
Oh, I love that. And I think that one of the greatest things about really having already lived a little bit of life, had a lot of accomplishments, been an adult, right? And then choosing to have children is you really start to recognize what is important because
Mm.
now you have had some fun, had more experience. And not only that, but you get to listen to other people's stories and maybe even horror stories, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
about where people did miss out on moments. And that is why you prioritize, moments together, family, and then career and
Yeah.
enjoyment in that regards. And what a fulfilling career, I have to add. How exciting, and I love that you've created this. Thank you so much for bringing it
Oh,
to all of us, to the world.
pleasure. My
Um,
pleasure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Christian, it's been amazing having you on the show. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience today?
You know, thank you so much for having me. This has been fun. I realize that your artwork is so much better than pictures of myself, which, by the way, when you're a musician, you're totally allowed to just have a wall of pictures of yourself in the background. That is allowed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, you brought it to the bigger. But no. So no. I mean, I do have icons of jazz in venues around the country. I'm touring regularly with performances. For folks that are interested in jazz or music in general, I would just say, please get off of your phones and your devices after you've done watching this, and then go see something live and really try to acknowledge the artistry and the craftsmanship that's happening on stage. And I hope you will be inspired to go support a venue near you to hear some music, whether it's jazz or whatever it is. But please go out, support live music. If you're interested in hearing some of my music, please go to iconsofjazz.com, and that'll link you to everywhere you need to be.
Ah, and absolutely, please go check it out. It's awesome. He's got all of the dates listed, so get to one of them, and you're going to be very pleased with what you see and hear. Christian Tamburr, everyone, it has been such an honor and a pleasure having you on the show. I want to make sure, even though we've mentioned it a few times, that everyone knows where to find you. So you've heard it. For those of you listening in, iconsofjazz.com. It's been displayed here on the screen for those of you watching, and for those of you who want to check it out later on, it's in the description below. So thank you so much for tuning in, Christian. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much to our audience, because
Yeah.
without you, the show wouldn't be possible. So goodbye for now, and we will see you next time.